And hello, party people. Welcome back to another NRW video. That's right, another review video for all our fans in Videoland, Facebook, and beyond. We're back with another video review, and we are really hyped for this one. We actually tried to do this last year when this first came out, but we decided, hey, screw it, we will do it. We will watch it, see what we think, and it is for the Umbrella Academy Season 1, all to getting ready for the premiere of Umbrella Academy Season 2 coming out this Friday, this week, whenever we upload this video. Eventually, this is coming out before. So watch this. Tell us what you think. Rob, you hyped? Because I'm hyped.
Yeah, I'm out for it now after watching the first season here. But before we get into our thoughts here, what we think here, let's roll the trailer here.
In October 1989, 43 women around the world gave birth. None of these women had been pregnant when the day first began.
How much do you want for it? I have adopted 6 children, gifted with abilities far beyond the ordinary. I give you the Umbrella Academy.
Does anyone wish to speak?
He was a monster.
Everything about our family is insane. It always has been.
Is that my skirt?
Oh, yeah, this. It's very breathy on the bits.
Nice to see nothing's changed. I jumped forward and got stuck in the future. Do you know what I found? Absolutely nothing.
When's it supposed to happen?
In 8 days.
Oh, shit.
There's someone out there who's trying to stop me from preventing the apocalypse.
We need the full force of the Academy.
Bingo.
Yay, sisters. Yay, sisters.
Get up, we're going.
Where?
Save the world.
Oh, is that all?
And that's the trailer. And you can see little bits and glimpses of the comic book kind of showing a little bit here and there. And that's been one of the major things. This is actually based on a comic book property originally written by Gerard Way from
My Chemical Romance.
My Chemical Romance, thank you.
Yeah.
And illustrated by Miss Gabrielle Ba, which I read the comic book a little bit, didn't get to finish it. In preparation for the show, I actually ended up going out and finishing the entire series. Again, Rob, you didn't know at all about the comic book until I actually mentioned to you. Like, I told you the show was coming out. I told you to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts?
Well, when you sent me you recommended for me to check it out. I mean, I like comic books, but for some reason, when it comes to like obscure ones that I'm not with here, I'm always kind of hesitant because nowadays the market has changed a great deal. If you have a comic book, everyone's trying to buy up the property for the next big movie or show. So I'm a little hesitant with certain things when it comes to some properties here. But upon reading it, I did like it. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was all like fantastically great, but I saw the potential that the show could do with making this property a somewhat, I wouldn't say unknown property, but definitely not a more like X-Men or the Avengers and things like that. And I gotta say, man, I actually like the show a lot better in comparison to the comic from what I did read. Now, I haven't read it in quite some time, but I did remember liking it, but I didn't love it. But I wasn't say it was terrible. It just wasn't my thing and how they approach certain storylines here and there. But overall, my overall thoughts as far as the show is concerned, I actually liked the show a lot more as the show progressed for me. So it took a while for me to get into it. But I mean, obviously, you have a different take on it from upon first viewing here. So why don't you go and share your thoughts on how you first came to viewing it here?
Well, I really enjoyed it. Like you said, the show does take some liberties. There are some changes from going from print to the show. They did some changes to the story. Not really the characters. The characters pretty much stay the same, power set wise and personality wise, to an extent.
Yeah.
But the overall structure of the story is still there, where this ragtag family comes together after they find out that their father has passed away.
Yeah.
And the way they become a family is kind of the weird circumstances, because they're pretty much were children that were given birth to by women out of the blue who had no signs of pregnancy prior, and they were given birth to. So they were pretty much raised by this father figure and kind of hone their skills and their powers. Now, every one of these, there were about 45 kids that were born through this process, each with their own special powers. But the main character, Mr. Sir Reginald Hargreaves, only got 7. Hence why their code names 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they're trying to hone their powers throughout the series to kind of help them save the world, so to speak.
Yeah, and one thing I couldn't help but make a comparison to is that this is basically like a pretty like effed up version of the X-Men here, because not that it's all grotesque or anything like that. It was just that it's a very similar scenario that I've seen before with the X-Men here, where you have the main leader, if you will, or the overall principal of the group, and he has his team that he put together here, having them use their special abilities to help save the world. But the one major difference here is that Hargreaves is pretty much a cold-hearted bastard, whereas Professor X is not. And whereas the family, the kids are looking to him as a father figure, he pretty much like distanced himself from that and said, "Don't call me dad," because apparently he had a big dislike of the children calling him a father figure of some sort. And I do remember that reading from the comic books. Obviously, the comic books gives a little more insight about the character himself, whereas the show kind of gives you hints, but not too much for you to really to see as far as the development is concerned, with the exception of what happens towards the end. But even then, you're kind of left in mystery, like who is this man really? But again, you have all these characters here that are with these group of kids who are just pretty much, they're all screwed up one way or another. They all have the same problem, which is Daddy didn't give him a lot of attention, and he favored one over the other, and he was always so cold towards me, and it was very aggressive towards me, and he's put him in really dire situations where you shouldn't put any children at all in those type of situations where they're locking him in a room full of dead people. It's just some really far-fetched I guess forms of disciplinary to teach them how to harness their skills. Mm-hmm. And that part of that relationship made it interesting for the show. Obviously, with the comic books, that was interesting too. But on the show, you actually kind of see him fleshed out a little bit more, seeing that interaction with them. I appreciated that. I don't know if you want to add to that as well too, because there's a lot of stuff that they obviously they changed for the comic from the comic book to the television show. That I don't know if you liked most of the changes that were made, or if you felt indifferent about it. Because for me personally, I actually like what they did better with this show than what I read in the comic books. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, I saw that they did take some liberties. There were some like shots, like kind of little shout outs or little references to the comic books.
Yeah.
Like their first mission actually was in the comic book was like the Eiffel Tower was like actual giant spaceship being taken over by a villain. And while in the show, it was like a bank robbery that they dismembered. But they do talk about it. Like they do mention it when the rumor is talking to her daughter, that little sequence story that she's talking about, telling her story. She's like, tell me about the Alfred Tower when you guys took over the Alfred.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool. Like you see those little callbacks to the comic book. Yeah. But I agree with you. A lot of the show does a lot more when it comes to like the character development and the relationship between the rest of the characters. Now, the only one relationship that you don't really see that was more in the comic book that was in the show was the relationship between Diego and Vanya, because they were like in a band together in the comic book. And the reason,
about that.
yeah, and the reason why she left is because he had like one final gig with her, and instead of doing the gig with her, he ends up going to this bank robbery, which is the bank robbery that they used for the show. So that's why she felt left out, but ends up leaving and writing the book that she wrote. While in the show, they kind of worked a little bit around it, but it pretty much stuck pretty close to the premise of the comic book.
Yeah.
Where the relationship between these kids and how they had to come together after the story of the death of their father or mentor, Dr. Hargreaves, and they're dealing with how it happened, what happened, this mystery of who killed him, which is kind of like the first half of the season was this mystery. Was he killed? Was he not killed? Was it a suicide? Was it not? Which eventually leads down to spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the series already, I reckon
it's been a year, guys. So
it's been a year. So it's just going to be totally spoilerific. He did it himself to get the kids together so they could give him a common goal to save the world eventually. But from what? They don't really know until
number five comes into the picture here again.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to cover here because obviously the comic book does a good job, from what I can recall, in setting up different events of their childhood and throughout their careers, pretty much. And then whereas the show, obviously, because there's a lot of like fantastical elements that were in the comic books that they just did not add on at all in the show here, and a lot of it has to do, I believe, for budget reasons, timing, and everything else associated with that. So it was obvious that they kind of kept it much more grounded, as grounded as you can get for a property like this. And I actually think that was a very smart approach for them to do that here, because one of the things that we talked about earlier, like it was the fact that they actually put more time into developing the characters here, seeing their relationship. Now, one of the things I did not like about the show in the very beginning was that everyone had a problem. And it took me a while to get adjusted for people to hear their problems, because Vanya felt left out, and she was obviously very depressed. Well, I guess you could say she's depressed because obviously she wrote that book. It became like it wasn't necessarily a bestsellers list. So even her doing something outside of the family business, she still is not able to reach that success that all the other siblings that she's grown up with has had in other areas in their lives. So you're seeing that, and then you also come across how they're all dealing with this turmoil they've been dealt with here, with growing up with their father, who was obviously very distant with them and just used them for the purposes of saving the world, but never really developing a more close bond with each one of those characters there. And somehow each person had a different relationship with them, but it all comes down to the exact same thing. Whereas he was just not a nice guy; he was a complete asshole. So it took a while for me to get used to that storyline, but as the show progressed, you start to see their flaws and their inner turmoil, and you understand why what's his name, Klaus, is a drug addict, and you understand why Rumor has been able to become so successful in her own personal career outside of the Umbrella Academy. Luther is this leader, but everyone, especially Diego, does not really like his approach because he's too much like a by the book type of guy. So a lot of those plots that they were going with here were too familiar with me that I've seen in other things. But as it starts to unravel, I started to appreciate the show more, especially towards the end, where I was like, okay, you know what? I love this show because all the big commotion has already been washed over, and now you're seeing the final set piece here. So I don't know if you want to add to that as well too, but those are my thoughts so far.
Yeah, I mean that was it took a while to kind of get going because it was like little bits and pieces that were kind of putting together for this final setup for the season finale, which they did a great job, a phenomenal job, kind of reeling us in, giving bits and pieces. And I loved it because, again, going back, they took little bits and pieces from the comic book with what they did. They took a little bit with this second volume when it came to. By the way, go read it. You have to read it. It really is a really good read. And the art style is it really helps with that weird quirkiness.
I did like the art style. I'll give it.
It was almost Mike Magnolia
I kind of had that
kind
vibe.
of has
I
that
agree with
feel
you
to
on
it.
that. Yeah.
So definitely check it out. But like they got little bits and pieces from like different stories from the series, especially when it came to characterization with Klaus and his time in the military. It was in Vietnam in the show. He's actually a French soldier in the comics, and I liked that they kind of kept some aspects of what the characters were, even though they changed them a little bit and
Yeah,
the
they
way they
did.
looked. The essence of the character was still there. Like Klaus wearing different clothing and being somewhat goth in a way, but being kind
In
of
the comic books, he was
yeah,
right. In the comic
yeah,
books,
and
he's
then
more
like
goth.
more goth. But even still, you can still kind of consider him a little bit gothy in here because he has his own
A
little
little bit.
style in a way.
Yeah.
With the tattoos on his hand, they actually say goodbye, hello.
Yeah.
They kept Diego's kind of striped shirt kind of motif for the Kraken. The rumor always wearing a jacket of some sort was kind of cool to see, like, oh, the little nods here and there.
Yeah.
And you're right. I do see the comparison to X-Men, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
and that kind of that family, dysfunctional family kind of story take place here, and they're just trauma. And I think that's kind of like a lot of the main. Well, many of the main themes throughout the show is the trauma, relationships,
Yeah.
um, and how we deal with those relationships and how we can heal from those relationships. Now that trauma, a lot of nature versus nurture going on here in some of the story with some of the characters here, especially when it came to the character of Mom and how her relationship with the kids growing up and
Yeah,
afterwards.
she was kind of that void to fill in for the affection that Hargreaves, their father, was not giving to them, whereas Mother was the one that was able to do that. When you come to find out she's a robot, which her introduction, because she's already a part of the storyline from the beginning, but as the show progressed, you see her introduction there, and it's actually a very interesting one at that. So I actually appreciated those little that part of the development for the story for the characters and how they were involved in each of these characters' lives here. So
And speaking of characters, Diego's love interest
yeah,
was a change from the comic books. It's actually that character was actually more of a Commissioner Gordon character.
Yeah.
That Diego interacted with, because Diego was like this Batman / Green Arrow.
it's kind of like Raphael for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Shows-
yeah, yeah. Kind of is like Raphael. Yeah, in the city, he was dealing with this commissioner cop. But the way that they changed it, I actually liked it for the better. In the show, it kind of gave some not really, I want to say humanity, but kind of like a different edge to the character. It gave him, like, it wasn't just a hard ass, asshole.
Oh,
But
I
like,
see what
he
you're
actually
getting. Yeah,
cared.
yeah, I can see your point there. Yeah, I should do agree with you on that. Well, so let's get into the actors that play these characters here, because this is one of the things where, like I mentioned, you and I were talking about it before we started recording, where one of the most boring characters in the show was, for me, was Luther.
For you, no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For me in the show was Luther, because he was such a straight and narrow, by the book type of character, and then when you come to find out, when he comes to find out that the whole purpose of him being at the moon and there's a whole story behind all that was kind of just like it really served no purpose, and he just felt like he was used, he was sent for something, but they had no reason behind it. He just didn't understand why his father would make him waste such a large amount of his time to be away from everybody when he could have been at home the entire time to take care of things down here on Earth. And then obviously he starts. I mean, that part of the story for the character, I was like, oh, shut up, dude, just get over it. You're big hairy, because he has like a body. Because in the story, I think in the comic books, because I had to do like a quick Cliff Note version to catch up with what I've read and what was on the show. I think I remember seeing that in the comic book, Luther had a major injury where he ended up having to have his head attached to a gorilla's body,
Like
and
a
hence
Martian
why
ape. A Martian ape.
a Martian. Okay, well,
You get all the powers like of a Martian ape, so like you can super strong, durability, and all
right.
that.
Okay.
In the
Well-
movie, in the show, he was
Yeah.
injected with the serum that turned him into like
This massive
upper
upper body ape, and it actually looked pretty good. Like when you actually see that taken off, when he doesn't have the shirt on, like from you see in the back of the screen here, when he takes off the jacket and the shirt, The prosthetics that he has on him actually looked really good. So I was like, okay, these guys. So here's the thing that I want to bring up about one thing I actually did enjoy about the show was because obviously Netflix had 4 or 5 comic book shows that were based on Marvel characters here. So they had Daredevil, Punisher, and all these other characters here. And when you look at those shows in comparison with the budget, they were made on the cheap. There was like $1 an episode to get that show done. Here, they actually invested a good amount of money to, do the show justice to where it could be as close and as faithful to the property that it's based on here as possible, and not taking the cheap way out. And if they have to take a cheap way out, they actually added onto the story to help make that flow, that the narrative flow really consistently, rather than just, well, we're not going to have this big epic battle scene like they did with like Defenders, which was a huge disappointment for me because we're expecting this major battle sequence between all the Defenders here with the bad guys, and it was just like 4 or 5 Marvel characters here fighting against 3 ninjas, the Hand. And I was like, that's just a waste of time. You have this big buildup for nothing. Here, the buildup, although it's all 7 of the characters there working together, the payoff made sense, and there was no just big epic battle sequence. It was all done in one location, but you felt the gravity,
the emotional impact. Yes,
right? You felt the gravity here.
Thank you.
And those Marvel shows, you didn't really get that too much, except maybe with the exception.
A lot of that comes from the actors themselves really putting in the work. I mean, let's just start it off. Ellen Page is the first name you see, which who plays Vanya Hargreaves, who does an amazing job.
Yeah,
does an amazing job playing Vanya, especially in the more emotional scenes.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, the you could hear the fear, the anger, the frustration, the pain.
Yeah, especially when Luther locks her up in that vault.
Oh man,
she's like screaming at you. I remember like, dude, you guys are fucking cold-blooded people, man. And even though everyone were like, we gotta let her out, and Luther's like, no.
But you could see the tears, the veins. Yeah. Like, oh man,
I felt for that, and I was like,
I felt that.
Because of you, Luther, you fucking idiot. We have this whole destruction on Earth because you didn't try. And she came to you and said, "I'm sorry, I love you guys." And he's like, "Yeah, I love you too." And like starts choking her out. I was like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" And that's to the credit of the writing and
Tom Hopper. Tom Hopper was,
of course, yes, yeah, absolutely. Not saying that Tom Hopper was bad. He was great. The character took me a while to get accustomed to, but again, that's credit to the people that are involved in making that story, that narrative flow the way it did. Because, again, the character of Luther was the most boring character in the entire show. He was literally, I was like, oh god, more Luther scenes. Fuck this guy. And then once you see all the shit that he does, because I got to do the right thing. Like, just hug your sister. Don't choke her out. And I actually thought he killed her, because I remember my wife was like, "Is he killing her?" I was like, "Yeah, he's killing her, that fucking idiot." And then all of a sudden he's like, "I love you," and then puts him. I was like, "What the hell?" I mean, it's just like, oh my god, if you killed her, you would have saved the world. But instead, you choked her out, and then you put her in a vault. What'd you expect was going to happen, dumbass?
Yeah.
But. Again, that's not to say shit about Hopper for the role. He did fantastic. He was really, really good.
To get that reaction out of you? Oh,
yeah,
man did his job.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. As the show progressed, I really started to appreciate it, because I was like, this is gonna be another boring. That show won me over as a story progressed for me, especially towards the end, where I was like, oh, okay, now I see.
And I think that's what I appreciate, the slow build, because some shows, they start off great, they start up hype.
Yeah.
Oh, they pick, they grab your attention early on, and then it kind of fizzles out at the end. Yeah. What I like with this show is that it progressively got better and better and better as it went on.
But they do a good job with emotional beats there too. Like I said, Luther. Vanya's, hey, I'm sorry. And he's hugging her, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna work things out, because there's a part of me knows the world's gonna end regardless, but it's probably not gonna be on their conscience, if you will. And obviously, Luther, being the dumbass that he was, trying to choke her out with his ape arms. I was like, dude, you could have saved the world.
Can we give? I think the 3 standouts were Klaus, played by Robert Sheehan. Fantastic job bringing that character on.
He was great. I
really
this
on the money. With just the one-liners, the fashion sense, the movement, and then that loving story between him and his Dave, and then kind of trying to get sober to help out his family, to kind of get those powers started. And his relationship with Ben, fantastic. Like Ben, his relationship with Ben and Ben being in the background reacting to him was great. I think that
Ben basically served like his conscience for the most part.
Almost, yeah. It was kind of like his Jimmy
really
Cricket
brilliant.
almost.
Yeah, which I thought was brilliant. I was like, oh god, these guys got it on the money here. Who's your other favorite actor that stuck out for you?
I'm gonna have to give it to number 5, Aidan Gallagher.
Dude,
that kid can act. Like I even imagine that I'm watching a kid. I'm watching an older gentleman playing a kid, and he sold that role for me. His mannerisms, the way he talked, the way he kind of like he had that "I'm better than you" attitude, because that's how it felt. Like, I am better than you. What are you talking about? Like, I can't figure it out.
Very condescending. Yeah.
Very fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Mary J. Blige playing Cha-Cha. She's fantastic.
I actually liked her. When I saw her name on the credits, I was like, I hope they don't do anything dumb with, because that's kind of what I was expecting. I was, because I don't recall seeing her act in other parts, and if she has, I don't know what those are as far as her filmography is concerned. So seeing her name on this cast here, I was like, I really hope they don't screw this up and have her something that's gonna slow the story down. You're 100% right. Her character in the story, I thought was so well written, and I thought she did a great job, especially with like some of the conflict aspect of her partnership with Hazel, which is another very wonderful story into the series as well too. Because I don't remember too much about the characters in the comic books, but I remember them being there. But I don't think you ever saw their faces. And here, obviously, you get more of that, and for good reason too. Another actor that stuck out for me, even though he's not in it that often, but when he is in there, like, I was like, this guy is fucking incredible. That's Colin Fury as Reginald Hargreaves, their father.
Yes.
That guy is awesome in that show, and he's such a cool. I mean, he played that role so good. And I believe this, if I'm not mistaken, this probably is a second or third comic property that he's in, because he was in Thor, the first one. He played the Ice King, and I think he might have been in the second Amazing Spider-Man film, if I'm not mistaken.
He might.
But at any rate, this role right here, and I don't know what's happening in Volume 2, because I think you told me you've read it. I don't know what happens, but I really hope he comes back if he's part of the storyline there, because the way that they kind of left this hanging with season 1, with even though he killed himself, it just seemed a little odd that you have that slight introduction where there are spaceships flying out from the fields, and he's opening up some little jar where some lights come out. Something was a little off, not off, but it was a little curious for me to wonder, like, what does that mean?
And that was kind of like the hint back to the comic books, that he's actually an alien to come to Earth to save the world, and that's why, look at everything that went down. He kind of picks these 7 kids, which was a nice, cool little callback. I don't think anybody else caught that. I was like, oh, okay. It kind of was like a weird dream sequence, but it was like a nice setup for the callback for that violin sequence later on with Vanya. And that was like one of the only heartfelt moment that I felt, besides his shaving scene with
Klaus.
With Klaus, was that he only smiled once that I could see. Yeah. And that's when Vanya decided to pick up the violin and play the violin, and she was playing it, and he smiled. I was like, what? That was the only, like, emotional moment that I saw from him. And they played that so well, and they kind of let that kind of linger for like a split second. I caught that, and it was really fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, they really do a good job in setting up like the characters here, and you're really starting to feel for like their habits and their treatment with other people there. And then you have those nice little touching moments where they step away from their daily routine, if you will, and you see that nice little moment where they actually show a softer side to them, and that being a really good example of that. Let's also talk about something else here.
And let's not forget one last person, Kate Walsh as the handler. Head of the commission.
The Time Commission, right?
Very, very sassy. Very, her kind of like trying to one up 5 every every turn here. She did a really good job too.
I thought she was great too. One thing I wanted to get into was the fact that the character of Pogo in the comic books was also like an intelligent super monkey, if you will, or chimpanzee, I should say. In the show, like I mentioned before, in comparison with the Marvel Netflix shows, money's not spent there as much as it is in here. And when you see why, when you watch a show, you'll understand why. The special effects in the show, especially with Pogo, the Pogo here, it's so good. With some minor things here and there, I can nitpick on it. But as far as the character of Pogo, how he's able to move and see all the little creases in his face, it looks pretty flawless here to me. So I don't know if you wanted to point out some of the special effects that they have in this movie.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. Because Pogo was actually played by two different people.
Right.
I think
it was an actor on set doing all the movements.
Yeah, it was Adam Godley doing the voice and the facial. And it was like another actor, I think it was Ken Hall doing the motion capture.
Yeah.
For Pogo. And playing the character on set. So like they kind of had two different people playing Pogo. But man, you couldn't tell watching the show. So yeah, that was an amazing job. And in the use of special effects was so sparse. Like you don't see it much. But you do, but it's not as big or heavy.
Yeah, it's not. It's they're. Yeah, I see where you're getting at. Yeah. Well, when it happened, you can tell, but it didn't take away. It wasn't a distraction. Like I said, especially with Pogo, which that could have gone wrong in so many ways. And they actually really put good use to that money and the special effects and getting the proper work that needed to be done to get that up to par. So I was really, really happy to see that there. So, like I said, slowly the show started winning me over there because I started to appreciate the set designs, the cinematography. Oh, and one other major positive I almost forgot to mention, which I know you're going to agree with here: the music. Soundtrack. The soundtrack is amazing in this show, and they actually use the songs to help tell the story or set up events that will eventually happen later on in the season there. So if you listen to the songs,
I caught on to that.
Pick up on that. So I really thought that, the people that put the show together, they really did their job, and they actually put in a lot of hard work in getting that to fit really cohesively here. And like I said, I was kind of slowly liking the show, but towards the end, I became hooked. So yeah. I don't know. I can't think of anything else I can add on as far as a positive concern. Now, as far as the negatives, because I don't think we really got too much into that here. For you, any negatives that stick out for you that comes to mind?
Not really. Except for maybe some plot devices.
Yeah.
They were using the show to kind of tie everything together. If he, the whole time traveling thing, if he could have just tried to travel to a different thing just to completely avoid anything, they kind of could have cut the series shorter than it would have. And the whole briefcase thing, there was like one leftover briefcase that wasn't used. I don't know if they're gonna hit that for another season or if it wasn't. I don't know if I could be wrong. But besides that, no, I don't really have anything negative much to say about it. It was a little bit slow to start.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I could say about it. But besides that, no, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think for me, just some of the characters at first weren't all that interesting for me in the very beginning. Like I said, especially with Luther, even to some points, even Diego, he was kind of like I saw that character and I was like, this is like Raphael, where he is doing his own thing and he has a bad attitude and he has a relationship with somebody. Where in this case, in the comic books or even the movies, he develops a relationship with somebody else that kind of just keeps things in balance for him, and that's kind of more or less what I saw here with this character. And then the only character that I really thought right off the bat that I hung on to that I really liked from the very beginning was Klaus, because he was the most interesting and he obviously had the most problems, but his problems weren't like when you saw Diego, Vanya, or even Allison, and even to some degree, what's his name, number 5. That it took a while for me to get used to the characters, and once everything started unraveling the way that it did, I grew to like them a great deal, especially towards the end, Luther, which is something I didn't expect to happen. Because if this guy sucks in the beginning, he's going to suck at the end. But nope. Thankfully, the portrayal of that character towards the end won me over. One thing I will point out that I did not like about the show that really does come to mind for me personally was the fact that the character of what's his name, Peabody, who was, I forgot the actor that played the character, John Magro, I believe is his name. He was the love interest that kind of came into the fold here for Vanya. Mm-hmm. That was a character that I really thought that could have been used better. I thought there was going to be a proper setup for him, and at the end he eventually meets his demise through with Vanya killing him. But that was somebody that I thought of like, okay, this guy could be a really big threat for them, and because there's a whole backstory behind him where you understand where he's coming from. He was obsessed with the academy at a young age, wanted to be a part of it, and all this stuff had occurred that eventually led to his personal turmoil that he's been dealing with his own father being very abusive towards him. There was a lot of potential that I thought I saw in that character, and then eventually, once he dies, that was it. And I thought that was a wasted opportunity. That was the one thing right off the bat I can think of that I did not like on that show. I don't know if you felt the same way about that character, if you liked the character or not, but I saw that. I saw this guy could be a real threat. Maybe not supernaturally, but he may have the edge on them in intellectual levels here. So I don't know if you think the same thing that I did about that.
Yeah. So yeah, I did. But what they were doing with I kind of saw him as kind of like a stand-in for like the conductor character from the comic book.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Setting Vanya up in exploring her powers and letting her know she had powers, and then meeting his demise by Vanya. It was a cool little callback to it. But yeah, I kind of wish they could have built a little bit more from him and kind of see more of a threat, because he was more of a threat in the comic, sort of. But he's kind of more like a cult following. So I thought maybe it's kind of more of a cult thing was they're going to do with him. But I mean, they did what they did, and it was not bad.
Yeah.
And
those are one of the changes that I thought was necessary. And like I said, the character of Peabody, I really liked him towards the end, because like, okay, this guy is a huge threat. He's basically doing. We've seen this happen before, like with what's his name in Civil War, Helmut Zemo, Baron Zemo, I think is his name, where he pretty much like creates a divide with the team. That's more or less what he's doing there. And whereas in the film, Baron Zemo doesn't die, but he's obviously held off to the side for a potential storyline down the line, which they are going to use for the new Disney Plus series here. And I thought they were going to do that with him, because like, oh, this guy's going to be a huge deal, but and that was the end of that. So that's what like I said, it's a wasted opportunity. But I digress there. But yeah, I don't have anything else.
No, I mean, besides that, there's not much of anything negative to say. Just like, again, some of those little plot points here and there. Maybe a little bit more interaction or like between some of the characters, like younger, kind of build up that relationship a little bit more, why exactly they were. Yeah, it was nice to have some of those flashbacks.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I really enjoyed the story. It took a while to get started. I think it's the only negative that I think I could say to kind of build up the story. But I enjoyed it. I'm hyped for the next season.
Yeah, same here.
Speaking of which, do you have any like theories going in?
Well, obviously the trailer for season 2 has already been out. And since I didn't read the second volume here for that storyline there, the only thing I was thinking of at that time, when I saw the end of the episode here for season 1, that they're going back in time, and the only thing I can think is they're just going to try to alter history altogether to avoid the events leading up to the end of the world in 2019. That's the only thing that crossed my mind. And quite frankly, I didn't want to think too much about it, because I genuinely want to be surprised from what I'm going to be seeing on the show, because everything that was slowly built up to that moment of season 1, I'm hoping from season 2, it's just pick up from where we last left off and just go full steam ahead here. And obviously from what I saw in the trailer, it looks like they're going to do a little regrouping again, because it seems like they all kind of went their separate ways. And so I'm curious to see how that happened. So I don't have any major expectations other than I hope that it doesn't slowly build up like it did in season 1. That's the only thing I hope it does not happen. Don't build up slowly. Let's just get straight to it. That's what I want.
Right. So from the trailer, from what I saw, you see Hargreaves. You see the kids kind of talk to Hargreaves, a younger version of himself. So it's kind of cool to see him coming back. So I'm excited for that. Um, Reading some of it, it looks like they're picking some from like the second volume where they're trying to attempt or stop the JFK assassination, depending. So it looks like they're playing out with some kind of history there, which I think seems kind of cool. Again, I like to kind of have to regroup together again, and trying to get the band back together to kind of see what's going on. And I see a little bit more Vanya interaction with the rest of the group and kind of like how they feel after everything that happened. Does everything get reset? Do they come back together? Is there going to be some animosity? I kind of want to see that friction.
Yeah, I do too.
Especially with their dad being alive and at that time period and them seeing them. I think I want to see where that comes out of it, and I want to see more of Hazel and Chaja specifically. And you know that. Yes, Hazel took out the handler. But will she show up? So there's so much stuff going on that I'm really hyped to see in the new season, and which we should be dropping this Friday. So I'm hyped to see into it. But that's our thoughts of season 1 of Umbrella Academy. We both really enjoyed it. Rob took the time to get into it, but he loved it. So
I converted, y'all.
Are you going to read the comic book again after this? Or?
I think I will actually, because now that I'm already aware of the property and where the direction is heading into, I think I will look into it more, especially with Volume 2 before Season 2 begins. So I definitely will look into it. But like I said before, new comic properties that everyone's trying to grab and make the next big thing out there. It's not always the most exciting thing for me because there's so many stuff out there that I'm like, I'll just take my time with it here. But if it wasn't for your suggestion and recommendation, just check it out, read it. I probably would have never even thought of turning a page.
I even did the same thing with the boys, by the way. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. I actually like the boys, the comic book series. I didn't finish reading the entire set, but from what I did read, which was a good portion of it, I like the show much more because the show just focused on the really core essence of what made the comic book so great.
Hey, you know what? Let me stop you there because I think that's another video for another time. We definitely have to do a review for season 2 coming out as that as well.
Yeah.
So that's coming down the pipeline. Rob and I are so hyped. We have so much stuff coming down. We have on the lookout. We're going to be doing a review for the upcoming Bill and Ted movie. So we're going to be doing a kind of a retro.
Really excited for that one.
We're so excited for that. We're definitely doing reviews for Bill and Ted 1 and 2, following up to the premiere of the movie. Same thing for the boys. Be on the lookout for that. We're probably going to be re-uploading that review for the release of that. For our review for the whole series. We're going to binge watch that weekend. Yeah. Rob, is there anything else we got coming down the pipeline that I'm forgetting?
As far as any of the works we're concerned, no, not really here. But other than Bill and Ted, the boys here, that's really the thing that I can think of right now here. But again, we have a lot of things that we're working on right now here too. Some of we're just not going to reveal at this point in time because a lot of it's a little bit hush-hush as we're getting into it here. But that being said, though, while you guys are here, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel here and help us to get to our numbers at 1,000 subscribers here because we have seen a bit of an numbers going up here a little bit here. So we're really thankful for all the people that have subscribed to our channel. So thank you very much here. NRW, we really do appreciate that.
You're awesome. And you're awesome. I see you in the comments below. You're awesome too, kid.
So we wanted you to please make sure that you share these videos and subscribe and also like the videos as well too. And while you're here, also check out our social media accounts here. On Facebook and on Instagram, you can just find us here on New Release Wednesdays and on Twitter simply at TheNRW. For myself here, you can follow me on Instagram at Rob_Medina0585. On Twitter, RobMedina0585. And on Facebook, simply just Rob the Movie Guy here. And my buddy from another nutty over there, where can I find you, good sir?
You can follow me on my Twitter and on my Instagram at David Is Disaster. You can follow me personally on my personal wrestling page on David Is Disaster on Facebook, where I talk everything I have coming up with wrestling and everything else pop culture. Because I think we also have a Facebook page as well. So we drop daily little snippets of pop culture news and other stuff going on. And that is it. If you liked our review, please let us know. Like Rob said, follow, sign up, whatever you have to do to follow us on social media, do it. And drop all those comments down below. Did you like the series? Did you hate the series? Do you hate our reviews? Do you want us something to review? Let us know. We'll do it. Because that's what we love to do. We love talking movies. We love talking pop culture. And we love talking anything else that's nerdy and you know, stuff that we love.
Yeah, we'll review. If you guys have suggestions, please let us know down in the comment section below. We'll review great films, we'll review shitty films, we'll review them all, and we will share our thoughts on that. Believe me, we definitely will be doing this. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to let us know through our social media accounts here and also in the comment section down below. But until next time, everybody, make sure you all stay safe out there, and cheers.
Cheers.
You see the cup? Cheers.
What?